I cried. I cried because, when you, like I say, when you see somebody that is that special, I don't know how you couldn't.
Maple says she was a good neighbor and an excellent athlete, but most importantly, she was an amazing mother.
He was a lot of love going there, and she was, you could tell he had her heart. He really did. He was a special kid, and I hurt for him.
Like Maple, many of Christina's former colleagues, friends, and family are devastated by this loss. Fox 6 calls her death heartbreaking, releasing a statement saying in part, quote, "Christina was a valued member of our newsroom and a beloved colleague whose warmth, humor, and passion for sports left a lasting impact on everyone."
She was just a beautiful person.
Happened on Tuesday to, our friend, but also our colleague, Christina Chambers. And I want to speak on it more for those that didn't really have the pleasure of knowing her and spending some time with her. Just, to kind of understand the type of person that she was. Twitter can be a tough place sometimes. But if you just go on there and you read all the testimonials and the things that have been said about her from, family, friends, coworkers, colleagues, complete strangers, one of the similar sentiments is that she was a light. I don't know if that does her justice. She was a beacon. She was a luminary. Like she just lit up a room every time she walked into it. And I think, she was what we all should aspire to be on a day-to-day basis based on how she treated other people. And I think, we can all learn something from the kindness that she displayed in her everyday life. And she was a true professional in every sense of the word. She loved covering sports in this state, whether it be high school, college, men's, women's, whatever it was. She was on our run to our first Final Four in 2019, and she was in Kansas City and in San Antonio, in Minneapolis. And hell, I think she was more excited to be there than we were. And you could just tell that based on, just her daily interactions with us and with Coach. And, man, she just took a lot of pride in what she did, and she did it at such a high level. Right now, just, praying for her. That she can find some peace, and her family, her friends, coworkers, her beautiful son, who she loved so dearly. He's about to he's about to endure.
On the morning of December 16th, 2025, a grandfather arrived at Quiet Home on Highland Manor Court in Hoover, Alabama, to check on his son and daughter-in-law after they missed a church event. When no one answered his knock, a small voice called out from inside. The door opened to reveal a 3-year-old boy standing alone. The child looked up at his grandfather and said something no toddler should ever have to say. He led him inside, past the living room, toward where his parents lay dead from gunshot wounds. That little boy had spent hours in that house, completely unaware of what death meant, waiting for someone to come. If you're already feeling the weight of this story and want to stay updated on cases like Christina Chambers that shake communities to their core, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Crime Lab Report and smash the bell icon. Missing out means stories demanding answers stay buried longer than they should, and we can't let that happen. Christina Nicole Chambers was born on October 28, 1987, in Cullman, Alabama, to Tim and Mary Chambers, a couple married 45 years who ran Chambers Farm and Garden Supply in their small town. Christina grew up with that southern warmth everyone talks about, the kind where you light up rooms just by walking in. At Cullman High School, she was everywhere: track, cross-country, soccer, and already dabbling in broadcast journalism through her school's TV program. Her teacher, Cindy Pass, remembered how Christina had this natural poise on camera, like she was born for it. After graduating in 2006, Christina earned a Division I scholarship to the University of Alabama at Birmingham, competing in cross-country and track for 4 years while studying mass communication. She wasn't just running for medals. Running became her therapy, her meditation, her way of processing life. Her coach, Kurt Thomas, knew her for 17 years and said she was unapologetically herself. Big personality, bigger heart. Even after graduating in 2009, Christina would show up at UAB track meets just to support the team, then text Coach Thomas asking for the latest team shirt so she could run in it. That was Christina. Loyal, present, always showing up. Her journalism career took off fast. She interned at WBTM in Birmingham while still in college, and they trusted her enough to send her solo to Tampa to cover Auburn at the Outback Bowl. From there, she worked her way up through Columbus, Atlanta, and Montgomery before landing at WBRC Fox 6 in Birmingham in November 2015. For 6 years, she became the face people in Alabama saw every Friday night on Sideline, covering high school and college sports with that infectious energy. She'd even anchor marathon coverage while running the race herself, literally going from finish line to broadcast desk, still sweaty, still smiling. But something shifted in 2021. Christina made a choice that surprised some people in the industry. She walked away from the cameras to teach. She became the director of Alabaster City School's Broadcasting Academy at Thompson High School, mentoring students in broadcast journalism. Within 3 years, she was named Alabama Scholastic Press Association's Advisor of the Year. Her students won state championships, and she'd mentored 2 Alabama Journalists of the Year. She wasn't just teaching kids how to use cameras. She was showing them how to tell stories that mattered. In August 2021, Christina married Johnny Rhymes Jr. at Sacred Heart of Jesus Church in Coleman, the same church where she'd been baptized as a child. They had a son, Constantine, who became her entire world. What went wrong between that wedding day and the morning a 3-year-old found himself alone with 2 bodies? Johnny Rhymes Jr. was 41 years old, and honestly, we don't know much about him. That's not because information is being hidden. It's because he lived an incredibly private life. He worked as an analyst at American Cast Iron Pipe Company until October 2022, studied at the University of Alabama, and kept almost no public social media presence. No interviews, no public statements, nothing. He was a complete opposite of Christina, who shared her faith, her running achievements, her teaching moments all over social media. Think about that for a second. How do 2 people that different build a life together? They moved to their Hoover neighborhood 7 years ago, back in 2018, before they were even married. A neighbor named Charles Maple lived nearby and watched their relationship evolve. He said when they first moved in, they seemed happy, like any young couple starting out. But after Constantine was born, Maple noticed something wasn't right between them. He didn't elaborate on what that meant, but neighbors notice things, the arguments that happen behind closed doors, the tension you can feel even from across the street, the way couples stop looking at each other. Christina was juggling everything by 2025. In early that year, she transitioned from teaching to a corporate communications role at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, but she couldn't fully let go of broadcasting. She kept doing sideline reporting for Warrior Nation Network and freelance with WBRC's Sideline show through the entire football season. She ran the Rome Marathon that year, was training for Boston 2026, still showed up for dawn runs with her Birmingham running group, attended Mass every Sunday at either Prince of Peace Catholic Church in Hoover or Sacred Heart in Coleman, and was raising a 3-year-old. She even traveled to Rome and walked through all the holy doors during the year of Jubilee. This woman was operating at full capacity, pouring herself into everything and everyone around her. Her last public appearance was December 6, 2025, just 10 days before her death, working the sidelines at Protective Stadium for the AHSA Super 7 State Championship games. A colleague talked to her that night. They discussed Constantine, how much Christina loved him, how she couldn't wait to get home and see him. That was a Christina everyone knew, a mother who made her son the center of her universe. Now here's where we need to talk about December 16th in detail, because understanding that morning is crucial. The couple was supposed to attend a church event. When they didn't show up, Johnny's father became concerned enough to drive to their home on Highland Manor court around 9 in the morning. He knocked. No answer. Then he heard his grandson's voice. Constantine, just 3 years old, opened the door for his grandfather. Can you imagine what was going through that child's mind? He'd been in that house for hours, maybe since early morning, with his parents lying dead somewhere inside. The grandfather followed Constantine into the home, and that's when he discovered both Christina and Johnny with gunshot wounds. He immediately called 911. Hoover police arrived at 9:03 a.m. The coroner later determined both victims died sometime between 6:15 a.m. and 9:03 a.m. that morning, meaning this happened in the early hours, possibly while Constantine was still asleep, possibly while he was awake. We don't know, and honestly, I hope that little boy was asleep and didn't hear anything. Police classified it as a domestic assault case and labeled it an apparent murder-suicide. They haven't released which person was the shooter, what weapon was used, or the exact sequence of events. What we do know is there was no forced entry, no signs of struggle visible to outsiders, no indication anyone else was involved. Police stated clearly there was no threat to the public, which tells you they believe this was contained within that household, between those two people. What makes someone snap like that? What happened in those early morning hours that turned a home into a crime scene? The investigation moved quickly because the evidence pointed in one clear direction. This wasn't a mystery about who was involved. It was about understanding why. Hoover police haven't released the full forensic details, but the coroner's classification as domestic assault tells us everything we need to know about how they're viewing this case. In murder-suicide cases, investigators look at gunshot residue, bullet trajectories, the position of bodies, and whether there's any evidence of defensive wounds. They're not releasing those specifics out of respect for the families, and because Constantine will one day be old enough to search for information about his parents' deaths. What we do know is that this appeared to be a sudden, violent end to whatever was happening behind closed doors in that marriage. Remember what the neighbor said about things not being right after Constantine was born? That's a 3-year window where something was building. Was it financial stress? Postpartum challenges? Relationship conflict that started small and grew? We don't have those answers, and honestly, we may never get them unless family members choose to speak publicly, which they haven't done. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. WBRC, where Christina worked for 6 years, released statements calling her a key part of their sports coverage, someone who brought warmth and humor to everything she touched. Thompson High School students were devastated. This was a teacher who believed in them, who turned their broadcast program into an award-winning operation, who stayed late to help them perfect their stories. Alabaster City Schools released a statement expressing deep sadness. Alabama Senator Katie Britt even shared public condolences. Christina's former track coach at UAB, Kurt Thomas, who knew her for 17 years, spoke about how she never stopped being part of that team family. But here's what really shows you who Christina was. Within days, a GoFundMe was created for Constantine's future educational expenses. The Alabama community rallied around this little boy who lost both parents in one morning. Visitation was held December 22nd at Cullman Heritage Funeral Home, followed by a rosary. Her funeral took place December 23rd at Sacred Heart of Jesus Church, the same church where she'd been baptized, confirmed, and married. That church held every major milestone of her faith journey, and now it held her funeral. Christina's parents, Tim and Mary, who'd been married 45 years and raised their daughter to be this bright, accomplished woman, had to bury her 5 days before Christmas. Her siblings had to explain to their own children why Aunt Christina wasn't coming to family gatherings anymore. Constantine, at 3 years old, lost both parents and will grow up with this tragedy as his origin story. That's the ripple effect of domestic violence. It doesn't just take 2 lives, it shatters entire family trees. Legally, there's no trial here, no courtroom drama, no justice system playing out. When cases end in murder-suicide, the perpetrator is deceased, so there's no one to charge, no one to prosecute. The case gets closed with the coroner's findings and police reports. For families seeking answers, that closure can feel incomplete because there's no trial testimony, no opportunity to hear evidence presented publicly, no moment where someone is held accountable. What this case does is force us to ask uncomfortable questions. How do we spot the warning signs in relationships around us? Christina was beloved by hundreds of people, colleagues, students, friends, church community, and none of them saw this coming. Does that mean there were no signs? Or does it mean the signs were private, hidden behind the smiles and social media posts? Domestic violence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's quiet, gradual, escalating in ways that aren't visible until it's too late. Think about the people in your life right now. Would you know if they were struggling in their relationship? Would they tell you? And here's the harder question. If someone like Christina, who seemed to have it all together, successful career, strong faith, loving family, active social life, could end up in this situation, what does that tell us about how domestic violence crosses every boundary of class, education, and success? Share this video if you think Christina's story deserves to be told with the respect and depth it requires. Drop your thoughts in the comments, not speculation, but reflections on how we can better support people in struggling relationships. Subscribe to Crime Lab Report if you haven't already, because these stories matter, and the more we talk about them, the more we can prevent the next tragedy. Check out our other videos covering cases that need attention. And remember, Constantine is growing up without his mother, a woman who loved him fiercely and wanted nothing more than to give him a beautiful life. Let's honor her memory by keeping these conversations going.